Okay, so let's talk about Estée Lauder. For the last few years, the beauty giant has been in a bit of a slump, but their latest earnings report just dropped, and wow, it's definitely making people sit up and pay attention. Let's get into it.
The company's been struggling for a while now, but these latest numbers, they hint that things might finally be turning around. So the big question we're going to dig into is this. Is Estée Lauder actually back? Is this comeback for real? And here's the headline that really grabbed everyone's attention. For the first time in 4 whole years, their operating margin is getting bigger. Now, that is a huge deal for them. So let's unpack the story behind that number. And the company itself isn't being quiet about it. They're basically calling this a pivotal year, a real turning point after a pretty rough patch. I mean, listen to the new president and CEO, Stéphane de la Faverie. He's talking about restoring growth and, maybe more importantly, expanding that operating margin. He's basically putting a stake in the ground, and it really sets the stage for everything else. All right, enough talk. Let's get into the nitty-gritty, the actual numbers. These are the key metrics that are signaling this potential turnaround. First up, top-line sales. They're up 4%, hitting nearly $3.5 billion for the quarter. Now, after a long period of decline, seeing any growth at all, that's the first real sign of some positive momentum. But this is the real showstopper, the operating margin. It's a key measure of how profitable a company is. And look at that swing, from a loss last year to a nearly 5% profit this year. That is that 4-year first we mentioned, and it shows they're not just selling more stuff, they're actually making more money on everything they sell. And of course, that all flows right down to the bottom line. Earnings per share are back in the positive, a massive reversal from the loss they posted last year. For shareholders, this is where the rubber really meets the road. Okay, so the numbers look good, but why? Where is all this growth actually coming from? Well, it looks like there are 2 main engines powering this recovery: fragrance and some really strong performance over in Asia. And when you break it down by category, the picture becomes crystal clear. Fragrance just shot up, a huge jump. Skincare is also looking healthy, but you can see makeup and hair care are still in the red, which points to some issues we'll get into in a second. So that fragrance boom, it's really being driven by their super high-end luxury brands like Le Labo and Tom Ford. It seems people are really willing to splurge on premium scents. And then geographically, Asia is just on fire. We're seeing strong 9% growth across the whole region, and in mainland China specifically, especially online. And that's a huge sigh of relief after all the worries about the Chinese market lately. Okay, but let's be real. It's not all sunshine and roses. To get the full picture, we have to look at the parts of the business that are still lagging behind. This was not a perfect quarter by any stretch. So, on the one hand, you have makeup taking a little dip. The company says it's because they're up against some really tough comparisons from big product launches last year. Hair care is down even more, but that actually seems to be on purpose. They're strategically pulling back on some things, which, can be a painful but necessary move to get more profitable. And then if we look closer to home, here in the Americas, there's a bit of weakness. Sales dipped by 2%. And the main culprit here seems to be the ongoing struggles at traditional department stores, which have historically been a massive sales channel for brands like this. So what's the game plan? How is Estée Lauder going to fix the parts that are broken and supercharge the parts that are working? Well, it all comes down to this big corporate strategy they're calling the Profit Recovery and Growth Plan. It really breaks down into 4 big moves. They're reorganizing the company and, quote, right-sizing. They're trying to simplify how they do things to be faster. They're outsourcing some services. And they're totally rethinking how and where they sell their products. Now, that word right-sizing, it's often corporate speak for layoffs, and yeah, that's what's happening here. The company's planning on cutting between about 6,000 and 7,000 jobs globally as part of this whole restructuring. So this is a really significant shift. A huge piece of this new strategy is just meeting people where they already shop. They're expanding big time on Amazon, launching major brands like Clinique and The Ordinary in new countries. It just makes sense. And you can't talk about modern shopping without talking about social media, right? So they're going all in on social commerce. Putting brands like MAC and Clinique on TikTok Shop is a direct play for a younger generation of shoppers. But it's not just about piggybacking on other platforms like Amazon or TikTok. They're also giving their own house a major upgrade. This new partnership with Shopify is all about modernizing their own websites to make that shopping experience way better. Okay, so that's the plan. That was the quarter. What happens now? With this new strategy and a good quarter in the bag, what does the road ahead really look like for Estée Lauder? Well, the company is sounding pretty confident, sticking with its growth forecast for the whole year. But they're also flagging some pretty serious storm clouds on the horizon. Potential tariffs could hit their profits by about $100 million. And then, of course, there's the stuff everyone's dealing with: an unstable global economy, inflation, and all those wild currency swings. And that brings us right back to where we started. Estée Lauder has a fresh strategy, and for the first time in a long time, it has some real momentum. But in a world this volatile and uncertain, will a great lipstick and a hit perfume be enough to make this comeback stick?